Ag PhD full episodes and more are now available on Acres TV, the newest ag platform connecting you to fields of information. Look for us on watchacrestv.com.
Each week during our Farm Basics time, we take one of the complex things that we deal with in agriculture and try to kind of simplify it a little bit. So whether you're a farmer or not, you'll know what we're talking about. And so we're just going to put this in layman's terms here. There's a big difference between how corn and soybean plants mature, and we want to explain that today.
Well, let's take soybeans first, because this one can be a little complicated. There are really at least a couple different kinds of soybeans, and in North America, to the north part of the continent, we're raising indeterminate soybeans. To the southern states, they could be raising indeterminate beans, but a lot of times they end up raising determinate beans. What's the big difference?
Okay, so the determinate beans have all their vegetative stages, then they have their reproductive stages. The indeterminate soybeans, they can have vegetative stages and reproductive stages at the same time. And the reason why there is the difference that there is because with the indeterminate soybeans, and like Darren said, they're grown in the areas that have a shorter growing season. Well, let's face it, in a year like this year, you might not even get the beans planted until they're technically supposed to start reproducing, which is in late June. So we want to talk a little about day length and the impact that has on these indeterminate soybeans.
Well, this is kind of interesting. So we know when the longest day of the year is, this year, June 21st. Well, after June 21st, there's slightly less daylight, and it's kind of imperceptible by us as humans. We don't really think much of it. A few minutes earlier, the sun goes down, no big deal. But for plants, they're taking the hint, saying, ooh, we don't have much time left, we better hurry up and put on seed, and that's what indeterminate soybeans do. So as that day length shortens, the beans are really going to start kicking it into gear. And you have to think about that as you're managing a crop like this, that, all right, up until that point, we could do a lot of things out there. Soybeans, they're a pretty tough crop and they could bounce back from a lot. But after the day length starts to shorten, they're putting all their energy into producing seed. So they're more susceptible to disease. They just can't handle insect feeding after that point. They don't want weed competition. So things have to be really good for soybeans if you want them to make lots of beans.
So what we're trying to say here is sunlight is what really drives maturity in these indeterminate soybeans, which are the predominant soybeans raised in the United States. On the other hand, with corn, it's not driven based on sunlight, it's driven based on heat.
And if we have more heat, corn's going to reach maturity faster. That's really proven. We understand that yeah, on warmer years, corn gets ready sooner, gets to maturity sooner. However, the way we're measuring the heat, well, it's a flawed process. We look at what we call growing degree units, where we look at the high temperature for the day and the low temperature for the day, and then we run a calculation to figure out, well, how many growing degree units did we have? However, this can be all screwed up. Say it was only 65 degrees all day long until about 4 o'clock and the sun finally comes out and it goes up to 85 degrees. Well, running the growing degree unit calculation, we'd say 85 was our high today. However, most of the day we were really at 65. So it would be nice if we ran a little more complicated calculation, but still, just know it is heat that's driving corn along.
So the reason why we wanted to talk about this today is you might not ever think about this if you're a non-farmer, and quite frankly, even as a farmer, you don't give it a whole lot of thought. But in years where we have lots of sunlight and early planting with soybeans, you might think, oh, the beans are going to mature way earlier than normal. It's really not true, because it's really based on when does the day length shorten. So I don't care if you planted April 20th, May 20th, June 5th, if the shortest day or the longest day of the year is June 21st, well, that's the trigger, and that's basically when, or right around then, soybeans are going to start to flower. They're going to go into the reproductive stages. And with corn, it's not really driven on, oh, do I have a sunny year? Do I have a cloudy year? It's driven based on heat and how quickly then can that plant mature. And hey, if we just don't have the heat, you got to understand that corn's going to take longer to mature. Now we've got wetter corn in the fall.
Well, there's certainly a lot of things that there are to understand about crop farming and understand about the different crops that you may be raising on your farm or in your garden. But one thing that we can all agree on is we have to stop weeds or they're going to rob our yield. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed later in the show.